Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to opening day here for the summer split of the Smite Pro League. My name is Tom F. Battinger, joined here by the illustrious Kevin Adonis Meyer. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Illustrious, though. That's a pretty fancy term.
Yeah,
Haven't heard
I
that
know.
in a long time.
We'll see if you can live up to the hype
Okay.
as we've seen in the past couple of weeks. Anyway, qualifiers are finally over. We've got 8 teams in each region now, and it's time for the summer. So a lot of exciting stuff we have planned for you today. We've got a North American game and a European game. But first, let's talk about how the split's going to go.
Instead of last season last split where it was best of 3s, so heading into summer split, we're going to be doing sets of 2. So no more at the end of the season, if this team beats this team in this way and that way. Now it's basically your record, you're going to go forward.
Uniform amount of games is a lot of fun when it comes to stats. It allows us to really take a look at things that are going to be flat across the board, almost as if it's no different at all, because it's actually not. So we briefly mentioned that there's going to be a different amount of teams, 8 teams. Why don't we take a look at the European region and see just who's going to be competing this split?
So start off, we're going to have Fnatic and Trig. They have qualified through, they're going to spring split. Afterwards, we had Titan and London Conspiracy also make it through. Team Dignitas were able to defend their spot in relegations. And the same with Upcoming Stars. Once again, they were able to stave off Elo Fishers to remain. Afterwards, we had 2 expansion matches where the Night's Watch and Epsilon Esports earned their way.
Very, very strong teams here for the Night's Watch and Epsilon Esports. If you're not familiar with them, Epsilon Esports went undefeated throughout all 7 weeks of the Challenger Cup competition, and the Night's Watch, no slouches either. They have a lot of familiar faces. You might remember Moex from Mortality, Zindern from Coast at one point, and, well, we'll wait for the rest of the season to take a look at the rest of them.
But we're going to have an exciting opening match. It's going to be Titan versus London Conspiracy.
That's right. 2
teams that were at about the middle of the pack this year.
Yeah, Titan did very, very well. They actually came out of the Challenger Cup a long time ago to join the SPL. So we're going to take a look at them, but also their opponents, London Conspiracy. It's a team spearheaded by SunTouch. We'll bring them up on the screen. You can take a look at all 5 of them. So SunTouch playing in the jungle this time around.
Back to the jungle. He was the jungler for Cloud9, and then coming into this spring split, the qualifiers, he was playing mid. They had to let go, or the jungler Redfu ended up stepping down, so he moved back to the back to the jungle, and they picked up Yaman in that role.
One of the more exciting points on this team, everybody focuses on SunTouch. I'm looking at the remnants of Team Coast, of Mealsy and Shaggy Shank. Mealsy is a character, he's a younger player, and during one of the European lands, a lot of people came back talking about the small red-headed guy with a number of notebooks and iPads, just tons of stats and strategies. He was the coach at the time. So there's going to be a lot of cerebral thinking coming out of that corner, and Shaggy Shank, sort of a breakout star, had a lot of super fame, but hasn't really shown up recently.
Yeah, that was Team Coast's story, basically. They came out, they won the European kickoff land back when the SPL first started in Season 1, but they were one of the bottom 2 teams coming out of that first season. Shaggy Shank and Emilzy do find their way back onto an SPL team, though, for this season.
Yeah, definitely 2 with the stronger members. Should be exciting. And they're going to be going up against Titan, a team that had a similar checkered past, sort of the top of the crop at one point. Now, not so much. They recently missed the spring finals land. We're not one of the 2 teams selected to join us here. So we've got our 5 members on screen, and I am looking at Ataraxia and Confrey.
Yeah, big lane swap, surprising lane swap coming out from them. Ataraxia was actually originally the solo laner for Aquila, back before they were picked up by the organization Titan. And he seems very happy with that lane. I believe he stated that is his favorite lane, his solo lane, but Confrey was not having a good time in it. He was saying he was bored, and it was affecting his gameplay. It was really affecting their motivation. And you could really tell that after coming in second at the Smite World Championships, they had a hard fall off into third.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting. You mentioned that solo is Ataraxia's favorite position. Well, it's Ataraxia's favorite position, and hunters are his favorite god, which is why he was sort of relegated to that hunter position. So in the solo lane, we've seen a lot of different picks this time around. We've seen some Ullr, we've seen some Neath, so it should be very interesting to see what gods Ataraxia actually brings into the solo lane, and Confrey going from the solo into the hunter role should be exciting as well.
For sure, but we also have for Season 2, for the summer split, we have the summer ticket here coming out. It's going to be 300 gems, and it's a pick 'em. You get to choose which team you think is going to win.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Again, just 300 gems, and with that, you automatically get 2 Shibalanki skins. You get a North American skin and a European skin. In addition to that, you get a fancy border around yourself when you load into the game. You get fantasy points if you win those games, and you also get fantasy points if you pick the correct team to win.
All right, I've thought. So we've actually polled the community. We've been able to pull the database from in-game, and we get to actually see what the community thinks, what they think they're going to win. In addition, the casters have also chosen the teams they think are going to win. Titan is the team that the community thinks is going to take it.
Again, the opening match that we're going to take a look at is London Conspiracy versus Titan. And as you can see at the bottom of your screen, Titan is going to be the team that the community picked. But that's cool. I'm going to put you on the spot, KK. Who do you think is going to take this one? And you're going to say, well, we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. I don't want to be the first one. I don't want to be the first one. I want you to be the first one.
All right. I'm actually really excited about this match, and I'll tell you exactly why. There's a number of reasons that I think that my prediction is going to be correct.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a 50-50 split. Okay. I think that Titan is a very strong team, but I think that they're going to need some ramp-up time with their recent roster swap. Of course, scrims, etc., but ask any pro. It's a lot different once you come into the main arena, online or not. So I think that London Conspiracy going into this one is going to have a head full of steam, and they're going to take game 1. But secondary to that, I think Titan will readjust, learn what they have to do, assess the situation, and I think they'll be able to take game 2 out of it. So just to recap, I think London Conspiracy takes game 1, and Titan takes game 2.
I am very similar to you. At first, I thought this was going to be a clear either Titan 2-0 or potentially a split with Titan slowing down.
All right.
But with the role swap, I'm a little worried for Titan. They're incredible players, and I believe Confrey has been practicing the last 3 days. I actually looked up his player profile. He's had over 50 games in the last 3 days on Hunters alone. You don't see any other god but a Hunter in his recent matches. It's going to be tough going up against Shaggy Shank, and I'm going to give it to LDC game 1 and 2.
All right, so London Conspiracy for both games. I think it's going to be a split. Well, let's take a look at what the other casters. We're going to have Scott and Bart on the call for the game. So let's see what Scott went ahead and picked, and he's going to go London Conspiracy as well.
Yep. And finally, it's going to be Bart, and Bart is going to choose Titan winning this series.
All right, so a little bit different right there. That'll be very entertaining to hear that call, knowing that Bart is thinks that Titan can pull it and that London Conspiracy can pull it for Scott. So it should be a little bit different. But that's it for Europe. Why don't we take a look at the North American side of things? Again, 8 teams, 1 region. Here they are on the top of your screen. AFK Gaming, the recent victors of the spring split. Team Solo Mid did not make it, but they were at the land themselves. Cloud9 and Denial Esports were sort of safe. And then the relegation teams were Cognitive Gaming and Enemy Esports.
Cognitive Gaming 3-0'd Resist very quickly. No surprise to see them back in the split. They had some good matches. They just weren't able to find really wins against such quality teams as AFK, TSM, and C9. Afterwards, we had Enemy Esports defend their spot with the new roster, Jerby in mid. They picked up the veteran Maddie Pocket. After that, it was Legion of Carrots, recently renamed to Legion of Carrots, not to DJ Pernicus there. And then finally, fan favorites, Team Eager, were able to qualify to the SPL.
Very exciting to have those 2 teams join the North American situation. Team Eager, as you all well know, very, very popular players, very good players as well. There's definitely a reason they're so popular. And Legion of Carrots has a lot of old names. DJ Pernicus, as Kevin mentioned, as well as Paint of Beyond, and a couple of other players that you may or may not know, and some new guys. So an interesting look across the board for North America. But why don't we talk about the North American game that we're going to see today?
It's going to be, not Fnatic, it's going to be Cloud9 taking on Denial Esports. And just like Titan, Cloud9, the winners of the Smite World Championships, they fell down. They weren't a 1 or 2 team. They came out 3rd.
Right. As he said, champions of the world, not champions of the spring split. So it'll be interesting. We'll see what Cloud9 is going to bring to the table. The same old crew, Song and Dance, Omega Annenster, MLC Stealth, Jeff Hinla, and Barracuda.
And next up, we're going to have Denial Esports, but they're going to have a new roster heading into the summer split. The best has stepped down and officially retired for now. My players retire all the time, and he's
retired twice so far, if I'm not mistaken.
He's got to beat the record. It's got to be like 3 or 4 by now. Additionally, they picked up Baskin Robin in that spot, and then they lost Mark. Unfortunately, I believe he had some personal obligations. He's young. He has a lot of school. Instead, they've taken Bronx Bombers, the star player on Enemy Esports from last season or last split. and they've picked him up in that duo lane.
That should be very interesting. As you mentioned, you said star player.
For sure.
He definitely was a star player when he was on Enemy. But there's a lot of name power on this Denial roster. Xing, Mace to the Face, Shadow Q. These are not small names. As you see, we have some of the old graphics. Reminder, Bronx Bombers is going to be in place of Madman Mark. So while he was a star in his old roster, will he be overshadowed by names like Mace to the Face, Shadow Q, and Xing, or will he be able to shine his own light? I think that's really what the player I'm going to personally be looking at in this North American game.
You know, I think these players are very similar. They were both ranked All-Stars, Mark and Bronx Bombers. And then coming into the spring split, they both performed very well. Bronx was obviously more of a star. Enemy Esports not able to win a game, so it was much easier to notice his success over Mark's success. But I think they're very similar players, and it's really going to come down to the synergy that he has.
Yeah, it's all about the synergy. We're a team game here at Smite, so it should be a little interesting. One of the things that I want to note is the question mark above Baskin-Robbins' head. You know, you mentioned he's a ranked all-star. You play a lot of ranked. Have you known him? Have you played with him? What's he like? What can we expect to see him in that North American match?
He is actually ready to play this series more than...
Really?
And he's been pretty prepped. He's played in the rank scene for a while. I've played him occasionally. I haven't played as much as I used to. But the recent matches he's been playing, he's been spam taunting. And to be fair, he's had good reason. He's had players pushed up to their tower all game long. So he's ready to play, and I think he's going to fit in. His aggressive play style is going to fit in with the rest of Denial Esports.
Well, he's got the Kevin Adonis badge of approval. Let's see what the community thinks as we take a look at the numbers from the season ticket in-game. We've got a number of people churning up and looking at it, and we've got Cloud9 going the community way. That's who the community has chosen. How do you feel about that one?
No surprise there. I mean, Cloud9, they've taken, I wouldn't say a fall, but they've taken a step back, maybe just a little bit of rust. I'm assuming after such a disappointing, at least for them, spring split, they're going to be looking to be much stronger heading into the summer. So it's no surprise there. How are you feeling about this game?
I also, frankly, I think Cloud9 definitely is the team to look at in this matchup. Denial, while being strong, they have a number of variables that they have to adjust to, and they have to change. I think in the future, Denial Esports could be a strong force to be reckoned with, especially given their play style. They're an early game team, which is sort of the antithesis of what our top teams do. They fight well in the late game, and they do good in team fights. So they're the antithesis, but as I said, they've got to work up to it. So I think all in all, Cloud9 is going to be the team to look at here. I think they're going to take this one 2-0.
I'm going to have to say the same thing. I think Cloud9 is going to take it. Denial Esports, if there was one team that was going to beat them outside of the Team Solo-Mid and AFK, it would be Denial because, like you said, and you said it earlier today, was their aggressive play style is kind of the counter to the top teams right now. If they can get ahead early, they can snowball it out of their control. I just don't think Cloud9 is the team to do it against.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to go the way of Cloud9 as well. We will actually have the call on that game, myself and Kevin. With that said, let's still take a look at what Bart and Scott have to say. Scott going to be the first one, and again, Cloud9 being the brand at the bottom of your screen.
No surprise there. I think it's pretty roundabout, and then finally it's going to be Bart as well going Cloud9. So across LC Titan, we're pretty split. These are two evenly matched teams, but Cloud9 seems to be the team we all agree on. Yeah,
it should be exciting to see this matchup, especially since this will be exciting to see how Denial reacts to these picks. Everyone's going Cloud9. How will Denial play?
They're going to have to go early game. I mean, that's where they come to.
Yeah, again, as talking about that Denial Cloud9 game, it's just so interesting because they are the anti-meta. Bear with me. Not the anti-meta of Smite itself, but of the SPL. The top teams are late game oriented teams. Team Solo-Mid and Cloud9 are teams that sort of eke out and then win in the late game. You know who had a similar game to Denial, Kevin?
It's going to be AFK.
AFK had a similar game. They did very well in the early game, but they never saw success. They had that sort of third place curse, right?
Yeah, they had their third place curse for the longest time, and it was they were hyper aggressive early. They could make it work, but they could never seem to transition into the mid and late game. Coming into the spring finals, though, they were prepped with a new strategy, and it's clear that AFK had learned to adapt to become that mid game and late game team. You saw them make the Thanatos work with their hyper protection comps, picking up Sylvanas whiffs, a ton of just protections across the board. Kiki playing the Isis, Shells, Defender of Olympus on Athena. They have a lot of gods who can transition into that mid and late game.
Yeah, so they've made the change, not just in the game itself, but in the picks and ban phase. And what happened when AFK took their hyper-aggression and made some of the necessary adjustments to win in the mid-game? Well, they won the entire spring split. They are the crown of the spring finals LAN. So it's up to Denial this split. There's 7 weeks in this play period of the summer. It's up to Denial this split to sort of make the similar, not the same adjustments. Every team is different, but similar adjustments that AFK made in order to change their game from strictly beginning game to sort of find that mid game and eventually see if they can take down the Titans that are Cloud9, Team Solo Mid, and maybe the question marks of the newer teams, Legion of Carrots and Eager.
For sure, and there is those 8 teams, right? So this is kind of a rough matchup for Denial to face. They don't really have some ramp-up time. They can't face some of the lower teams, the Cogs, the Legions, the Eagers, who just made it into the summer split. They're going to have to face off against the number 3 team coming out of spring and the previous world champions, who are more than likely going to be stronger than they were last season.
Very true. Don't forget, folks, if you're just joining us, 300 gems for the season ticket. There's still a couple of more minutes left, if I'm not mistaken, to get your picks in. We talked a little bit about our picks for both Europe and North America and what happens with those 300 gems. You get a chance to pick who you think is going to win. If you're correct, you can amass points that will eventually land you with a sweet skin.
Yeah, it's going to be the Nemesis, the Executioner Nemesis at 1,000. There's a Kukulkan skin as well, and I believe one more skin after that at 3,000 points. So you want to get those fantasy points up all throughout the season.
Yeah, it's definitely very, very exciting. And just to cap off the matches that we're going to be looking at today, on the European side of things, we're going to be starting off things with Bart and Scott in the booth with London Conspiracy, and they're going to be taking on Titan. And then on North America, myself and Kevin will have the call, and that'll be Denial Esports versus Cloud9.
I think both of these are going to be pretty interesting. The Titan LC we're pretty split on. Cloud9, we're very confident in our picks that Cloud9 will take it, but Denial always has the chance.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely picked Cloud9 as I definitely picked Cloud9 as my 2-0, but I would not be colored surprised if Denial winds up taking one. There's definitely a changing of the guards, or so it would seem, in the North American scene. Cloud9 has not made it to LAN. And we've seen some of the confidence falter on that Cloud9 roster. Barracuda specifically has had a number of troubles just sort of adjusting to not being number one. You hear commentators talk a lot about the Sat.May aura or the Omega aura of this. You got to respect your opponent because they're so much better than you. Barracuda has that. Players play around Barracuda, but in order to make use of that, you have to be aware of it. Will Barracuda going into this matchup have the confidence in himself to make some of the plays that we're used to seeing out of the Hunter for Cloud9?
I think he will. I think he had a rough spring. I wouldn't even say he had a rough spring. He had a pretty good spring split.
He had a great spring split.
But it's just the fact that he lost, right? He didn't go to LAN. This is actually the first time that this Cloud9 roster, has not been to LAN.
Wow.
They've actually never been below second seed in online qualifiers or league system since the launch tournament, the path leading to the launch tournament. It's been almost a year and a half.
I mean, that's going back to when they were called Cognitive Gaming, Exertus Esports,
Vicious and Delicious.
Vicious and Delicious, if I can correct you on that one. There were two E's. Two E's. Vicious and Delicious.
Words. Come on now.
So it's a long storied history for this Cloud9 organization, and this is the first time that they're actually losing. So, I mean, that's definitely something that people have to look at and sort of evaluate. Even the teams themselves. I mean, you came from Reason Gaming. You guys had some success, and then you obviously, well, you're here now in a suit and tie instead of a jersey.
I'm in a suit and tie at least. I'm not just bumming in my mom's basement anymore.
So what I'm getting at, Kevin, I don't try to hate too much, is that you've had your day in the sun, and then you fell. As a professional, how do you react from that? How do you come back? Is this as bad as we're making it out to be for Cloud9, or is it just another day in the park?
It's a little bit different for me. For me, I had the problem where I wasn't finding success, but that was also on my part where I didn't put in the time. I think the question is going to be, is Barracuda putting in the time to get back to where he was? Because if he's playing less than he was before, which I'm guessing was a lot, it's only going to hurt him. He has to match his play style or his play time from season 1, if not increase it.
Very true. You know, one player that I'm actually not concerned about for Cloud9 is Omega. He's never really had a confidence issue, so I think that he can really be a keystone for this team in this sort of period of turmoil going on, saying, hey, look, we didn't make it to LAN, but we are still better than everyone. I think he's got that.
One thing, I actually teamed with Omega back with Vex Gaming, and we were actually the original Denial Esports roster with MLC Stealth way back then, before my Reason Gaming days. And Omega on Twitter during the spring finals admitted that Cyclone Spin was the best solo in the world, and I have never, ever heard him say anything like that before.
A lot of interesting stuff, a lot of history here with Kevin and Adonis. There's a lot of talk about North America. Why don't we join our casters for Europe? London Conspiracy versus Titan. Scott and Bart, take it away.